Marcus Stein, 45 years old, night porter at Techno Ermini AG in Frankfurt, was cleaning the CEO's office when his gaze fell on the blackboard covered with incomprehensible mathematical formulas. AI problem unsolved. Losses. 100 million euros was written there in red. Marcus, whom everyone knew only as the janitor, looked at these formulas and smiled. He took a marker and, with the same matter-of-factness with which he mopped floors, corrected three mathematical errors that had tormented the engineering team for months. The next morning, when CEO Elena Weber saw the solution on the blackboard, she couldn't believe her eyes. What happened next not only changed Marcus's life, but revolutionized the entire company and proved that genius can be hidden anywhere, even behind a janitor's overalls. Frankfurt, May, 11:30 p.m. The skyscrapers of the banking district glistened in the night, and silence reigned on the 40th floor of Techno Germany AG. Marcus Stein pushed his cleaning trolley through the deserted corridors and whistled a melody by Bach. With his age, gray hair, and calloused hands, Marcus was invisible to the employees who worked here during the day. To them, he was simply the janitor, the one who emptied wastebaskets and polished floors. But Marcus hid a secret that no one suspected. With a degree in mathematics, with honors from the Technical University of Munich, and a former researcher at the Max Planck Institute, Marcus had lost everything 10 years ago after the failure of his text startup. Depression, debt, divorce, everything had collapsed like a house of cards. The janitor job was the only thing he could find, and over the years it had become his comfort zone. No one judged him, no one expected anything from him. He was alone, but safe. That night, while cleaning CEO Elena Weber's office, his gaze fell on the large magnetic board that dominated the wall. It was covered with mathematical formulas, flowcharts, and notes in English. In the middle, written in red highlighter, was a message that made Marcus stop abruptly. K, problem unsolved, budget exhausted, estimated losses, 100 million euros. Marcus put down the cloth and approached the board. He recognized the formulas immediately. They were machine learning algorithms for optimizing artificial neural networks, stuff he knew like the back of his hand from his university and research days. As he read, he immediately spotted three glaring errors in the calculations. Errors that probably caused the entire system to crash. How could they have overlooked that? He muttered to himself and shook his head. He hesitated for a moment. It was none of his business. He was just the janitor. But then he saw that number, millions of euros, and thought of all the people who would risk their jobs if the company went into crisis. With a sigh, he took a marker from Elena's desk. With precise movements, he began to correct the formulas. First, he corrected the error in the activation function. Then he repaired the gradient calculation. Finally, he optimized the backpropagation algorithm. In 20 minutes, he had completely rewritten the central section of the board. He looked at his work with satisfaction. It was elegant, efficient, revolutionary. Then, as he realized what he had done, he panicked. He had just scribbled on the CEO's whiteboard. They could fire him on the spot, but it was too late. He put the marker back, finished cleaning up, and left, hoping that no one would ever notice what he had done. He didn't know that the next morning would change everything. Elena Weber arrived at the office at 7:30 a.m. the next morning, as usual. At 38, she was the youngest CEO in Techno Ermini's history, and that was no accident. A graduate of MIT with a doctorate in artificial intelligence, Elena had a brilliant mind and an obsession with detail that terrorized her employees. That morning, she was particularly tense. The DeepMind Germany project, an AI system for industrial optimization that was supposed to revolutionize the German manufacturing sector, had been at a standstill for 3 months. The country's best engineers couldn't solve an algorithmic problem that was costing the company millions every week. Elena turned on her computer, poured herself a cup of coffee, and turned to the whiteboard to check the formulas for the umpteenth time. What she saw left her speechless. The formulas had changed. Not just changed, they had been completely revolutionized. Where there had previously been convoluted and inefficient calculations, there was now an elegant and brilliant solution. Elena approached the blackboard. Her heart was racing. "That's impossible," she whispered as she read the formulas. "That's genius." She grabbed the phone and immediately called her engineering team. "Come to my office immediately." Immediately, within 10 minutes, the office was filled with some of Germany's best minds. Lucas Hoffman, the lead engineer. Franziska Weiss, machine learning expert. Josef Muller, pure mathematician. They all stood silently, staring at the blackboard. "Which one of you did this?" Elena asked in a tense voice. Dead silence. The engineers looked at each other in confusion. "Elena," said Lucas. "None of us were here last night. We left the office at 8. Then who the hell wrote this?" Elena exploded. Franziska approached the board and studied the formulas carefully. "Elena, this isn't just a correction, it's a complete breakthrough. This solution could not only solve our problem, but revolutionize the entire field of industrial AI. I need to know who wrote this, now." Elena called security. The cameras showed only one person in the building after 8 p.m. Marcus Stein, the night porter. The janitor. Elena couldn't believe it. "Get Marcus here immediately." Joseph shook his head. "Elena, are you sure? I mean, he's just a janitor. He couldn't have written that formula." Elena looked at him coldly. "The cameras don't lie, and those formulas are real. Someone wrote them, and that someone was here last night." Minutes later, Marcus Stein entered Elena's office with his head down and his hands trembling slightly. He was wearing his usual blue work suit and had the look of a man who was about to be fired. "Marcus," Elena said in a calm but intense voice, "did you write that on my board?" Marcus looked at the board, then at Elena, then back at the board. The silence dragged on like an eternity. "Yes," he finally said in a weak voice. "I'm sorry, Ms. Weber. I know I shouldn't have done that. If you want to fire me, I understand." Elena looked at him in disbelief. "Fire you, Marcus? Those formulas. Do you know what they mean?" Marcus finally looked up. "They solved the problem with your deep learning algorithm. You had 3 fundamental errors in the loss function and gradient optimization. The system couldn't converge because—" "Stop!" Joseph shouted. "That's impossible. A janitor can't know things like that." Marcus fell silent immediately and looked down at his feet again. Elena took a step forward. "Marcus, tell me the truth. Who are you really?" Marcus looked up, and for the first time in 10 years, Elena saw pure intelligence in his eyes that had been hidden for too long. "I have a degree in mathematics with honors from the Technical University of Munich. I have a doctorate in theoretical computer science and 17 publications on artificial intelligence systems. Until a few years ago, I was a researcher at the Max Planck Institute and had a machine learning startup." The silence was deafening. "What happened?" Elena asked. "My startup had developed a revolutionary algorithm for speech recognition. An American corporation sued us for patent infringement. The legal battle lasted 3 years and destroyed us. I lost everything. The company, the house, my wife, my reputation, and the janitor job. That was the only thing I could find. No one expected anything from me. I could be invisible." Elena approached the blackboard. "Marcus, these formulas are brilliant. With this algorithm, we could dominate the market for the next 10 years, Joseph protested. "Elena, he's still a janitor." "Shut up, Joseph," Elena interrupted him. Then she turned to Marcus. "I want to offer you a position as Chief Technology Officer." The office exploded in protest. "Elena, have you gone crazy?" Lucas shouted. "This man solved a problem that you couldn't solve in 3 months," Elena replied. "I'll give you a 3-month trial period, Marcus. If the algorithm works, you'll become CTO with a salary of EUR 200,000 per year. If not, you'll go back to your job without any consequences. What do you say?" Marcus looked at the board, then at the team. "I'll take it, but if I fail, I'm leaving. I don't want to work as a janitor here again." Elena smiled. "You won't fail, Marcus. Do you like this story? Give it a like and subscribe to the channel." Now let's continue with the video. The first few weeks were difficult for Marcus. He had to catch up on over 1 years of technological development and face the skepticism of the team. "That's absurd," he heard them whisper. A janitor giving orders to engineers. Elena supported him completely and gave him an executive office, a team of 5 engineers, and an unlimited budget. Marcus worked 16 hours a day, obsessed with the idea of failing again. The critical moment came in the 4th week. The algorithm seemed perfect in theory, But when they translated it into code, it produced inconsistent results. See, Joseph said, I told you it wouldn't work. He's just a janitor trying to make himself important. Marcus spent 3 sleepless nights checking every line of code. Nothing. The algorithm continued to fail. On Friday of the 5th week, Elena called him to her office. Marcus, the board wants to stop the project. You're right, Elena. Maybe I really am just a janitor. Red, don't be silly, Elena replied. You're a genius. The problem is that you have a saboteur on the team. Joseph, I had the logs checked. Someone modified the code at night. Tomorrow is the final presentation. This is your last chance. Marcus spent the whole night alone, rewriting the algorithm from scratch. He didn't tell anyone, working in silence with the concentration of his young research years. At 5 a.m., the algorithm was perfect. The boardroom was tense. Seated around the table were the 9 most powerful members of Techno-Erminy. In the middle, a giant screen would decide Marcus's future. Elena presented the situation precisely. President August Meyer, 72 years old, looked at Marcus skeptically. Mr. Stein, your story is unusual. You will understand our doubts. Marcus stood up, his voice firm. I understand them completely, but I only ask you to look at the results. For 20 minutes, he explained the algorithm with clarity and passion. He was no longer the shy janitor. He was the brilliant mathematician he had always been. The demonstration, he concluded, would be carried out in real time at their factory in Stuttgart. Real-time data appeared on the screen, thousands of sensors, millions of data points. Your current system has an efficiency of 73%. My algorithm should achieve at least 89%. He activated the algorithm. Nothing happened for the first few minutes. Then the graphs began to change. 70%. My God, whispered a board member. The efficiency continued to rise. 80%. That's impossible, said Joseph. But there were no errors. The efficiency stabilized at 93%. Mir stared at the screen in amazement. Do you know what this result means? The factory will produce 20% more at the same cost. For all factories, we're talking about $300 million a year. Mir stood up and applauded. All the board members followed suit. Joseph protested, how do we know it will last? I suggest running the algorithm for a week. Agreed, said Marcus. If the efficiency remains above 89%, I'll take the job. If it drops, I'll leave. What if someone sabotages the algorithm? Asked Joseph. Elena suggested external 24-hour monitoring. Perfect, said Marcus. I have nothing to hide. A week later, the conference room was full of people again, but the atmosphere was completely different. August Meyer had a smile that hadn't been seen in years. Elena beamed with pride, and even Joseph seemed to have accepted defeat. Gentlemen, announced the external auditor, the results of the weekly test are final. Dr. Stein's algorithm maintained an average efficiency of 91.7% over 7 days. There were no failures, sabotage, or external interference. Marcus felt an enormous weight lift from his shoulders. He had done it. After 10 years of invisibility, he was back. Mir stood her up. Marcus, on behalf of the entire board, I officially appoint you Chief Technology Officer of Techno-Erminy. But that's just the beginning. What do you mean? Marcus asked. I mean that your algorithm is worth much more than $300 million a year. Other companies are already calling to license it. We could create a whole new department. Elena smiled. Marcus, how about becoming a shareholder in the company? We're offering you 5% of the shares. Marcus looked at her in amazement. 5%, but that's worth millions. It's exactly what you deserve, said Mir. But there's one condition. What is it? We want you to create a program to discover other hidden talents. How many people like you are out there? How many geniuses are wasting their potential in jobs they don't value? Marcus thought of all his years as a janitor, of all the nights he hid who he really was. Many, many more than you can imagine. Then it's your new mission to find them. 6 months later, Marcus's program for hidden talents had already discovered a cashier who was a cryptography genius, a mailman with a doctorate in physics, a cleaning lady who had invented a new nanomaterial, and a waiter who had developed a revolutionary algorithm for logistics. Marcus, Elena said as they looked out the window of his new office as director of the innovation department, you've changed everything, not just the company, but the way Germany views talent. No, Marcus replied, watching the team that was once invisible and now working on Europe's most advanced projects. I've just proven that genius can be hidden anywhere. Sometimes it just takes someone who has the courage to look beyond appearances. Elena hugged him, and sometimes it takes someone who has the courage to correct formulas on a blackboard, even if it means risking getting fired. Marcus smiled and looked at the photo on his desk. He and his team of hidden talents who had won the European Prize for Technological Innovation. That night, when I saw those wrong formulas, I didn't think about the consequences. I just thought it was wrong to let 100 million go to waste when the solution was so simple. That's why you're a true leader, Marcus. You always think of the common good before your own. Marcus looked at the blackboard in his office, which was now full of his new formulas for future projects. Do you know what the most important lesson I learned was? Tell me that it doesn't matter how far you've fallen, no matter how long you've been invisible. If you have something valuable to offer the world, that value will emerge sooner or later. You just have to have the courage to show it. A year later, Marcus received a phone call that moved him to tears. It was Joseph. Marcus, said the voice on the other end of the line, I wanted to apologize and I wanted to ask you a favor. Go ahead, Joseph. My son lost his job 6 months ago. He's a good engineer, but he's 55 and no one wants to hire him. I thought maybe in your program. Marcus smiled. Even Joseph had learned that talent has no age, no titles, no labels. Send him to me tomorrow morning, Joseph. I'll give him a chance. Marcus's story proved that talent has no uniform, genius has no title, and excellence can arise anywhere. A janitor had saved a company from $100 million in losses, not because he was lucky, but because he had the courage to be himself when it really mattered. And it all started with a few corrections on a blackboard made by a man who decided to no longer remain invisible. If this story has inspired you and made you believe in the power of hidden talents, leave a heart below. I want to hear your stories. Do you know anyone with hidden talent? Have you ever underestimated someone because of their job? Do you believe there are unrecognized geniuses in every workplace? Share your experiences with underestimated talents and second chances in the comments, because every story of redemption inspires others to never hide their value. Subscribe for more stories that prove genius has no limits. And remember, it doesn't matter what work you do. What matters is what you are capable of doing.